Lyman, Dr. Crane, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly with you on your Tuesday morning. We are broadcasting live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Nick Frazier, how's it going?
Fantastic, Jake Lyman. My Cardiac Cardinals got a nice win last night
There
at the
you
top
go.
of the ninth. 4 unanswered runs. I think back-to-back home runs. J.J. Weatherholt, along with, Ivan Herrera. No, I'm sorry, Pedro Pajes and J.J. Weatherholt.
I love it. I
So-
love it. My Tigers are in Atlanta this week, and they were just in Cincinnati, and I'm having the blackout struggles the last couple of days. I didn't get to watch any of the Reds games because, Cincy games are blacked out here, and I won't be able to watch any of the Braves games because they're blacked out here. But, we'll be keeping up. I wish I could get down to Atlanta for the games. I love that park. But middle of the week, it makes it a little bit tough to make that a day trip.
Yeah, I've heard it's a cool park. I've yet to go to Atlanta for all that stuff, but that is a ultimate bucket list thing is to go to all the stadiums.
Yeah,
I feel like that's a cool thing to do.
I have been to Truist Park. I have not actually seen baseball played there. I was around it for a long time. We went down early. We walked around the Battery, got into the stadium, and took our seats. Rain delay. An hour later, they bang it, and what are you going to do? But it is a very cool park. I'm excited to see if the Tigers can match up with the MLB best Atlanta Braves.
That is a little weird to say.
Right. They had a little bit of a tumultuous spring training. I'm blanking on his name, Jerkson Profar, with the full year suspension and all that. But the Braves off to a good start. I know there are lots of Braves fans around here who are very happy about that.
Yeah,
so.
I think Baldwin has worked out well for him as a catcher, along with a solid hitter. And then you have Matt Olson, who's on track to be their Iron Man of their franchise. So
right.
This is a good time to be an Atlanta Brave fan.
It is. They were the first team to 20 wins. So I'm excited to see what this series looks like. We're going to talk a lot of Titans today. We will also get into some college sports news. The NCAA changing their eligibility rules possibly in the next month or so. So we'll get into all of that. But let's start. Dr. Crane, we haven't talked to you since last week. What were your thoughts on the Titans draft? Obviously, we're able to address a decent amount of needs, especially at premium positions early with Carnell Tate and Keldrick Falk. Added some depth on the interior offensive line. What are your thoughts about what Mike Borgonzi did this weekend?
I thought they checked off all the empty boxes on their grocery list, and the interior line was my biggest question mark. I'm still on the fence about the Arkansas pickup, Fernando Carmona. Thank you very much. It's not the on-the-field issue that he had the stomping, whatever that is. That's beyond that. He addressed it in his media availability, said he is a different player now,
right?
Which is understandable.
He's not Ndamukong Suh. Like, there's not a string of events here.
Right.
Let's hope it's a one-time thing.
Yeah, my issue with that pick is hopefully he can develop into being a really good run blocker, because watching some of his film, the pad level was a little bit high. And I feel like if you lose your leverage, if you're an interior offensive lineman, then you're just kind of, obviously you're getting beat off the ball, but then you don't have that leverage to move for the, running back. And right now you have Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears, and then, you add Nick Singleton to the mix. You wonder how that plays a factor. But overall, I do like what they've done. The Keldrick Falk pick, I think that one's going to have to grow on me a little bit.
Yeah.
I know they, traded back into the first round for that. So we'll just have to wait and see. But overall, people that are freaking out about the Carnell Tate pick at 4, I wouldn't hesitate on that one. I think we look at that Ohio State team and being a, Brian Hartline coaching.
Yeah. Wide receiver factory.
Yeah. Like, that's incredible. And so I get Emeka Buka and Jackson Smith and Jigabo were both 19 and 20 in their respective drafts for their draft selection. But Carnell Tate being number 4, this guy hasn't dropped that many passes. I don't think he dropped any last year, right?
I don't know if he did. He didn't drop a lot, period. I think he dropped 4 his entire career at Ohio State.
Yeah.
And he slipped down boards throughout the draft process. I said it on Friday morning that the image that is burned into my head of Carnell Tate was him short-arming the ball in the quarterfinal game against Miami. And it's the last impression that I have of watching him play. And then, of course, he ran the 4.53 at the combine, which was slower than many expected. But it's clear, based on what we've heard from around the league, Carnell Tate was valued by a lot of teams in the top 10. This was a weird draft. There wasn't as many blue chip caliber players. Now, I would have taken Arvell Reese just because I think the upside there is higher than Carnell Tate. But I do think Carnell Tate is a safer pick. And as we've been saying, we're going to get into helping Cam Ward today. you helped your young quarterback. You gave your young quarterback a running mate, somebody who can be his go-to target. It's up to Carnell Tate now to live up to those expectations. You were picked 4th overall. It's going to be, there's a lot that's going to be on his shoulders, but I think coming out of that wide receiver factory like Ohio State, working with the guys that he's worked with during his time there in Columbus, including Jeremiah Smith coming out next year, I do think he's ready for that challenge. We'll see if he's going to be a wide receiver 1, or like a lot of people have speculated, is he more of just a high-end wide receiver 2? That's going to be the question for Carnell Tate.
I think the jury's still off on the whole maybe a wide receiver 2, because I see him more as that wide receiver 1. It's more of, I go back to the examples of Jackson Smith and Jigba and Emeka Egbuka, the situations they were brought into with those franchises. You look at Emeka Egbuka when he was in Tampa Bay last season for his rookie year. You have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Cade Otton. You have a few pieces around you, along with Bucky Irving and Rashad White at running back. You have a lot of those just gadget guys and also perennial wide receiver 1s in Mike Evans that you can rely on and just slowly ease a rookie wide receiver in Emeka Egbuka into the wide receiver room. Same thing goes for Jackson Smith and Jigba. We saw how this past season he was probably the best wide receiver in the entire National Football League.
Yep.
The year before that, they eased him into the system.
With DK.
Exactly, with DK. And then you still have the duo running back in Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet his rookie year. Now that is now shifted. He is going to be the focal point of that offense, because we all saw Cooper Kupp have that triple crown run with LA. After they let him go, he comes to Seattle. He's not wide receiver 1. He's wide receiver 2, because they know he can possess the ball, get those needed yards that you're yearning for, along with Jackson Smith and Jigba, who can do whatever you want on offense and take the top off the defense as well.
Yeah, and I do like for Carnell Tate, you mentioned kind of easing him in. I really like, hindsight's 2020, that they kept Calvin Ridley and getting him to agree to that pay cut. I think Calvin Ridley, he's not going to be a 1,000-yard receiver this year, right? Like, I think those days are behind him, but we've heard from everybody that Calvin Ridley works harder than anybody else. He is a true pro in that locker room. And you heard last year from Jim DK and Alec Iamaner that he was really somebody who helped them adjust to playing at the NFL level and learned by example of like, hey, this is how I need to go about practice. This is how I need to go about my treatment. This is how I need to go about learning the offense. I think that's going to be really valuable for Carnell Tate, to have Calvin Ridley in that room to learn from. And then Ridley probably gone next year, but you hope at that point Carnell Tate is ready to ascend to being that wide receiver 1 type player. Even if he's not, I don't think he's going to burst onto the scene and be Jamar Chase, right? Like, that's just not what you should expect. But I think you can have him be a 1,000-yard type receiver as a rookie, and hopefully the learning experience this year will help him elevate to be that kind of player in the future.
Yeah, and for like a benchmark just right now on paper, easing him into the offense and easing him into the wide receiver room, for me, I think 650 yards is baseline right now. I mean, I think that'd be I guess you could say a minimum for right now. I don't want to put too much of a high expectation on a guy in Carnell Tate. Understandably, the number 4 pick, highest pick in franchise history for a wide receiver, but minus that, put that in the rearview mirror. I think 650 yards is a good baseline for a guy like Carnell Tate this season.
I would be disappointed if it was just 650 yards for Carnell Tate.
Really?
I would too.
I just, again, and as Texter says, like 1880 says, don't love the Tate pick at 4. He's short and maybe so. I don't think he's short. Like, no, he's definitely
6'1".
Yeah, he's not 6'5", but yeah, he's not short. He says at 4, I feel like you're looking for a Megatron type specimen. To be fair, a Calvin Johnson type player is not available this year, so settled here with Tate. I will say there's not a Calvin Johnson type player in almost any draft. He is a very unique player, but I agree with you in terms of like the level of prospect. There wasn't that type of player. But when you're picked at number 4, you're expected to step in and be a difference maker right away. 650 yards doesn't move the needle for me. Well, but it's not a horrible season. And, you have to stay healthy too.
Sure.
But I think he should be close in a 17-game season. He needs to be close to or above 1,000 yards as a rookie. That's what? 60 yards a game? Like, I think he needs to average 60-ish yards per game, which puts you right around 1,000 yards for the season.
Yeah, we started this show off with just how many people are in that wide receiver room. Again, you bring in a guy in Wan'Dale Robinson who barely eclipsed 1,000 yards last season with New York. And again, Brian Daboll's in the equation, so you wonder how much he factors into the game plan. You bring Calvin Ridley back. Didn't have the best season last year with Tennessee, but at the same point, that's a guy that we all are talking about right now as not a father figure, but a guy that these younger wide receivers can look up to as a mentor. If he still is in the cards of being in the game plan, to me, I see it more of a, Brian Daboll, not a smokescreen, but using some of these players as to set up, let's say, a Gunnar Helm opening in the flat or something like that. That I think the game planning going into this upcoming season for Brian Daboll it's more about that than it is just focusing on one player needing 1,000 yards. I think that's what it is for me.
I agree with it. I think it just should happen within the process of the offense. And like Cam Ward, you saw that at least early in the year, he had a connection with Calvin Ridley.
Sure.
And it didn't pan out. He got hurt. He dropped passes, but you could tell that Cam Ward had his go-to guy. I think that's what Carnell Tate needs to become. I'll look back and give an example from the Brian Daboll offense 2 years ago. Malik Neighbors, rookie year with Brian Daboll as his head coach, as his play caller, 109 catches, 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns in 15 games. So I don't think Carnell Tate is Malik Neighbors as a prospect, but you were drafted in a similar vein. I don't think 100 catches and 1,200 yards is realistic, but that was in 15 games for Malik Neighbors. If Carnell Tate plays the full 17 games, I would guess he ends up in the 70 to 80 catches for 1,000 to 1,100 yards and 5 to 10 touchdowns. Like I think that is a realistic expectation for Carnell Tate. If he is, you said 650. Like I would say
minimum.
If he's under 700 and is healthy the whole season, I would be really disappointed with that.
Interesting. I just can't get on board with putting too much of a high standard on a guy like that. Again, I get it. Fourth overall pick. I get it. I have to look in the rearview mirror with that. This is a process for the Tennessee Titans that is not going to happen in one season. I get all that. Whereas you look at a guy in not Wan'Dale Robinson, but Calvin Ridley, the clock's ticking on him. So after this season, let's say Carnell Tate's fully immersed into this offense, comfortable, has an extra bit of, let's say, 20 pounds, 10 pounds on his body in the next offseason, then you can really immerse him into being the go-to guy. That's how I perceive it. I don't want to put too much on a rookie wide receiver like that when there is so much of the future for a guy like Cam Ward and Carnell Tate to have a 1-2 punch action. Because again, this is the baby steps format right now of the Tennessee Titans in their next phase.
And I do think they're building towards 2027. I don't think the expectation is playoffs this year, but I do think you want to see these young cornerstone pieces that you've drafted over the past few years look like they are cornerstone pieces for your franchise after this season. You want to come out of this year thinking Cam Ward is your franchise quarterback. Carnell Tate's your wide receiver 1. J.C. Latham's your right tackle of the future, and you're ready to extend him next offseason. All those things need to happen for this team to get back to being a contender in the AFC South and hopefully eventually in the AFC. But obviously there's going to be a whole lot that goes into that as well. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to text or call. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Robert says he's still going to be a rookie. I just read off Malik Neighbors' rookie stats under Brian Daboll. And I'm not saying he needs 100 catches and 1,200 yards, but I think getting to 1,000 yards is more than realistic for a guy like Carnell Tate. 1880 asks, if Ridley busts out this year, do you see the Titans extending his contract? Ridley's what, 32?
Yeah, somewhere around that. Like just eclipsed over 30, 31.
Technically, he's under contract for next year. He turns 32 in December. I would say no. I think that ship has sailed, especially with drafting Carnell Tate at number 4. Calvin Ridley is here for this year, and then I think he's gone. You can either draft or I think you're hoping that Chim Dikari or Alec Iamaner is able to step into that other outside receiver role opposite of Carnell Tate.
Yeah, again, I look at Calvin Ridley in this situation as a safety blanket for Cam Ward while Carnell Tate gets adjusted to the NFL. That's just the only way I see Calvin Ridley staying in the cards this season. Next season, like you're saying, Jake, I'm with you. I don't think he's around because you have Carnell Tate now.
615-737-1025 is the phone number. You can text or call. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. The draft is obviously mostly about the players that you're bringing in, but it also has an effect on the players currently on the roster. We are going to play a little game coming up next. Stock up or stock down on current Titans players after the draft. I've got 6 guys that I want to go through, and I want you to let me know, do you feel like their stock is trending up based on what the Titans did this offseason, or trending down and maybe lessening their role heading into 2026? Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly with you on this Tuesday morning. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Today, the Nashville Sounds take on the Norfolk Tides, the AAA affiliate of the Baltimore Orioles at First Horizon Park. First pitch is at 6:35, and you can catch all of the action on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Family Leisure and Social Cantina. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly with you. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. So the NFL draft happened last weekend, and we talk a ton about the players coming in and the roles that they might play. But every player you bring in has an effect on the players already on the roster. So I've got 6 names for you, and I may add a 7th here because I just thought of somebody during the break that might have been affected. Are you going stock up or stock down based on what the Titans have done this offseason? Do you think that they're going to be able to take a step, take a bigger role for the Titans, or do you think that they're starting to be pushed to the background? So we're going to play stock up, stock down here. First player, Femi Oladejo. Do you think his stock is going up or down as he enters year 2 with the Titans?
Stock up. 100% stock up. I've been saying it since the very beginning before the draft. I think with the Keldrick Falk pick, it even makes his stock go up even more because of the way Falk is built. He's not not lanky, skinny edge rusher, but he's not as fast as a guy as a Arvel Reese or I'd say maybe even a Ruben Bain coming off the edge. But, I get the whole arms thing. But back to Femi here. Femi transitioning from a linebacker to a edge rusher in college, then getting drafted in the second round to be an edge rusher in the NFL. I get it. He has a few injuries that happened in his rookie season. But under Robert Saleh, this should open up a brand new, I wouldn't say career, but just a brand new opportunity for a guy like Femi Oladejo.
I was leaning towards stock down here because they did add a ton when it came to the defensive line. But with the way Robert Saleh uses his players up front, comes in waves. He said he wants his defensive linemen playing 60% snaps, not much higher than that. And they've specifically mentioned Femi, without being asked about him. They're asked about the defensive line and the pass rush, and they always seem to say, don't forget about Femi. Femi can fit in this defense. We scouted Femi as a 4-3 defensive end out of UCLA. So I'm going to go stock up. I think this coaching staff believes that they know how to get the most out of Femi Oladejo. I'm going to say stock up, even though he may be used in more of a situational role rather than he was used more as a starter when he was healthy last year. Like, he was out there a decent amount. I think he's going to have his snaps cut back, but I think he might be able to make more of an impact even if he's not out there as much.
Yeah, 100%. Because at this point, to me, it's kind of like not Calvin Ridley, but the Carnell Tate situation. You want to ease him into the defense. Everybody has all their eyes on the first round pick of Keldrick Falk. I think he will take majority of those opportunities, but at the same time, in the background, there's going to be a guy in Femi Oladejo who is hungry to get better. And I think that's what a lot of people are going to see, not at the beginning of the season, but probably around week 5, week 6, this guy should start really starting to roll with the punches here on this defensive side of the ball.
I think what you've seen is that Robert Saleh really trusts Aaron Whitecott. I think he said on Friday in that press conference, they asked him about the development of these young guys, and he's like, that's why Aaron Whitecott gets paid so much. So I think they really trust his ability to develop these young players. And I don't know if you saw Jim Wyatt posted an update to the roster yesterday. He put out all right, here's every player at every position, not including undrafted free agents who aren't officially signed yet. There were 20 guys listed as defensive linemen. And that includes all your defensive tackles, all your defensive ends. But you can see that they are investing in wanting to have a really deep front four. And I think Femi Oladejo plays a role in that this season. I'm going to go slightly stock up for Femi Oladejo. Number 2, Cody Barton.
Interesting. I'm going to go stock down.
Yeah.
He's definitely seen I'd say peaks of his career for sure. But with this Titans defense, Robert Saleh is slowly phasing out some of these vets, even though, he was an integral part of this defense last season. Slowly phasing them out to bring in that next wave of talent. See what Cedric Gray is involved with this. Even Anthony Hill, the new, second round pick, the linebacker. Again, that might be a guy that is kind of the same situation as Carnell Tate. You ease him into things, but Anthony Hill will probably start special teams, get his name out there, then be plugged in the defense. But you never know. Maybe he's a day one starter as well.
I think Cody Barton might have to find a role on special teams if he's going to make this roster.
Wow.
Like he's what's his contract, I guess would be the question. I mean, I don't think he's making a ton, but I look at it as you drafted Anthony Hill and you've got Cedric Gray. Those are your starting linebackers because you're probably not going to be in a base 4-3 most of the time. You're going to have that nickel, which TD actually mentioned. He thought James Williams could maybe be the big nickel, converted safety. We'll have to see how they play that out. But like Cody Barton can't play that role, right? That's not his game. He's going to have to be a backup linebacker for the most part because you're not going to be in that base 4-3 where, yeah, he would be the third linebacker, but how often is he actually going to be on the field? You would save $4 million with cutting him. So I guess he's probably going to be on the roster, but I do think he's going to have to find a role on special teams. I think with that Anthony Hill pick, it's a pretty big stock down for me on Cody Barton.
Yeah, clock definitely ticking. His contract is through, I believe, 27, and he is a UFA in 28. So
yeah. He is not going to be on the team next year. I feel pretty confident saying that, especially with trading up to get Anthony Hill. All right, number 3, speaking of the nickel, Marcus Harris. Do you think it's stock up, stock down for Marcus Harris heading into his second season?
I would say up. I'd go stock up just because of the situation on defense. You add more secondary in the offseason free agency wise. You see what can be bolstered around him. I think it's more of him adding on to what was brought in than it is him having to show up and show out. That's how I see it. I don't see him as being one of those guys that's going to really take it on his own shoulders. This is a defense that is a collective, not just a one-man show.
I think he is one of my biggest stock ups from the draft because they didn't draft anybody in the secondary. And that was a spot that, talking with everybody, it was, all right, of course, wide receiver, edge, interior offensive lineman, linebacker. Those were the spots that everybody highlighted, but they said also nickel cornerback. You got to add somebody there. And they didn't, which I think shows a lot of belief in Marcus Harris to play that spot. Alontae Taylor and Cordell Flott are going to be your outside cornerbacks. And Taylor can bump inside if you need him to, and you can maybe play Joshua Williams, the guy from the Chiefs, on the outside. But I do think Marcus Harris, the fact that they haven't addressed that role throughout this offseason shows a lot of trust from this coaching staff. And I really do think that Marcus Harris is going to be an integral piece of that secondary heading into the year. So I think big stock up for Marcus Harris.
Yeah, and also, too, the guy's 25 years old. And that's a trend that we saw in this year's draft with those, I'd say, position players at premiums like wide receiver, even at the edge in some aspects. Inside linebacker, 21 years old.
Yep.
The only guys that were drafted at a higher age were the interior linemen. Yeah, Fernando, along with Pat Coogan, more on the 25 and up range. So I think that's interesting, and it's an interesting a way of looking at how Saleh and Borgonzi are trying to structure this offense and defense, is that those meat and potatoes type of positions, you want to have experience at.
Yeah.
Rather than you have your premium positions at cornerback, wide receiver, running back. You want younger talent for that one, because of contract purposes, you're able to get that extra 5th-year option along with there's more upside.
Right.
If you're 25, you're probably only going to see one contract.
Right. If you end up extending Carnell Tate and Keldrick Falk, they're going to start their second contract at 25 years old, 26 years old, and you're going to get most of their prime through that second contract. But I agree with you with some of with Pat Coogan. If you want him to start immediately, he's got to be experienced. He's got to be smart. He's got to be tough. And drafting a 20-year-old probably doesn't lead to a lot of that stuff. So I agree with you that I think they chose well in terms of where they went with experience versus upside. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We'd love to hear from you. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. I got 3 more names for you. We'll get to them on the other side, starting with Gunnar Helm, because I think Gunnar Helm might be in for a big year considering what they did in free agency. 615-737-1025. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly, next man up. 125 The Game. Next man up, 1025 The Game. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly. Titans offseason, for the most part, is wrapped up. The big season of player acquisition is in the books. Still could be some moves here and there, but we're going through the impact on the current players on the roster based on what the Titans have done this offseason. And all of our football offseason coverage brought to you by Tennessee Brewworks. Raise a glass with Tennessee Brewworks, proud partner and official craft beer of the football offseason on ESPN 1025 The Game. So we went through three players going stock up, stock down after the offseason. We said stock up on the two second-year players, Femi Oladejo, Marcus Harris, stock down on Cody Barton after the draft pick of Anthony Hill Jr. on Friday. Next one is Gunnar Helm. And I think, a lot of the guys I have on this list are last year's draft picks because sometimes you see a guy in the building for a year and you say, all right, he's good, but we're going to go upgrade. We feel like we can get somebody better. With Gunnar Helm, I think you saw a lot of flashes of what he can do basically from the preseason all the way through the end of the year. It wasn't quite consistent. They didn't give him a whole lot of opportunities, splitting snaps with Chigakonkwo. I think this year, based on what we've seen, that is your tight end one, and they are going to get him in a position to hopefully be Cam Ward's best friend in the middle of the field.
Yeah, definitely a stock up for me. And it's, people might hesitate because of like, oh my goodness, the Oklahoma tight end, Jaren Kanak.
That's a special teamer.
Exactly. Special teamer, along with, you look at Daniel Bellinger, that's a blocking tight end. If you see Bellinger moving off of this roster after this season, you could see a guy in Kanak kind of step in as that blocking tight end, because again, that guy is transitioning from a linebacker to tight end.
Yep.
Not your best pass catcher, but again, had a pretty good season with Oklahoma.
Yeah, he's solid. Yeah.
Not going to discredit that,
right.
But you're at the NFL level now. You're going to be blocking a little bit more.
Yeah, I think everything the Titans have done in this offseason shows me that they think Gunnar Helm is ready to take off, right? Like Daniel Bellinger as your Chigakonkwo replacement shows you that you're ready for Gunnar Helm to get the lion's share of targets when it comes to tight end. Now, Daniel Bellinger is going to be a better blocker, and he's going to be in there a lot. I think Daniel Bellinger is going to get his snaps, but Daniel Bellinger is more of a blocking tight end who can help you in the passing game if necessary. Gunnar Helm is your guy who is going to line up, and he is going to be a mismatch for opposing secondaries. And I really like what they've done around Cam Ward with Gunnar Helm, because I think he could end up being that X factor for this offense if he does take that step in year two.
And also it goes back to the point that I made earlier with the wide receiver room and how Brian Daboll approaches just the scheme of it all. Like he even mentioned in his introductory press conference, the way he likes to disguise things and how, it's presented on the ball is that, you can have all your wide receivers run all these different routes, and then you're going to forget about the one guy in the back, and that's Gunnar Helm.
Yeah.
Might be open in the flat. I know his success in Texas when he was playing in college was a lot of those passes that were checkdowns in the flat, and he had a lot of yak yards after that. So I think that's something to keep an open mind to when Gunnar Helm now taking majority of these reps at the tight end position.
And I think Wan'Dale Robinson is going to help Gunnar Helm too. You didn't really have that short yardage guy, chain mover, quickness in the middle of the field. Now you have that with Wan'Dale Robinson, and you're making defenses kind of pick their poison with how they're going to cover Helm and Robinson if you get into a 3rd and 5, right? Like, are you going to have your best matchup with Robinson and try and keep his quickness in control? Or do you put a mismatch on Gunnar Helm and give him an opportunity to go make a play? So I really like Gunnar Helm's upside heading into year two. Coming up next, Jackson Slater. I think this one is it's tough for me to go stock up or stock down because they have added more bodies to both the center and the guard room, but there's no one that you really feel like, all right, well, he's getting that job. I think Jackson Slater going to have the opportunity to compete for both center and right guard, but obviously nothing's being handed to him with Sloatman and Volson and now 2 draft picks being added in those spots.
Yeah, it's an interesting look because a guy in Slater who there's, a lot of upside to that. Being a younger player, you come from being a 5th round pick and you're just, I think that's the one thing you got to really hone in on with this Tennessee Titans offensive line is these younger players, even including J.C. Latham in the conversation, they need to develop. Like, you got to give it a little time. I know this team needs to really see some improvement at that offensive line group because it didn't really happen under Bill Callahan. But again, Jackson Slater, J.C. Latham, take a deep breath on them. I know Latham is your starting right tackle. and I know Jackson Slater is kind of in the mix for that right guard center position, take a deep breath on him. I'm not saying stock down. I'm saying it's more stock up for him because there's more room for development.
Yeah, I'll say stock up for Jackson Slater, barring a signing of Kevin Zeitler. If they sign Zeitler, I think that shows you that they're not confident in Slater to take that step and be a starter this year. I would say it's unlikely that Zeitler gets signed at this point, especially making 2 picks at center and right guard, but it's not impossible. If they sign Zeitler, I would say maybe it's stock down for Slater, but as of now, I'll say stock up.
Well, my only issue I have, and it goes back to the Arkansas pick, Fernando Carmona, is the guy played majority of his snaps at left guard at Arkansas.
Yeah.
And obviously not sure what the transition rate is when you go from left guard to right guard in the NFL, but your right guard right now is Cordell Volson. Like, you go and draft a left guard that you already have majority of the points of Peter Skoronski starting at that position.
Yeah.
Well, I don't really understand that thing.
I think guard, it's easier to flip back and forth than tackle.
Sure.
Because you're not out there on an island.
Sure. Then why would that not be talked about more then? That's my biggest issue.
Yeah. Carmona, I'm not considering him much of a factor. Like, maybe he's better than we're all anticipating. I don't think Fernando Carmona is going to start at right guard.
Well, I know. I'm just saying, though, that competition at right guard is more open than it is being a backup at left guard.
No, I agree. Yeah, I think Carmona is going to be a depth piece. I think maybe it's a Slater type thing where, he's the backup this year and you hope maybe he develops to be your starter at right guard. Maybe he ends up just being a depth piece. I would love the young guys to start at the beginning of the year, because that shows you that they have way more upside than Sloatman and Volson do. Like, I think if you end up starting Sloatman and Volson, it's because the young guys aren't ready. And I know Parker has said that he thinks Pat Coogan is going to start maybe not start the season, but at some point this year. I think you would really hope by the end of the year that your starting center and right guard is Pat Coogan and Jackson Slater, because that's a long-term solution. Volson and Sloatman are not long-term solutions. Slater and Coogan could be, or Carmona, or whoever it ends up being. I think maybe it's the veterans to start the year. Like, maybe Coogan's not ready to start week 1, but I do hope, as Parker said, by the end of the year, you do have the young guys with more potential, Coogan, Slater, starting, because that gives you a little bit more runway to address the rest of the offensive line.
Yeah, because, I mean, you talked about earlier with the second contracts with those position players at wide receiver, cornerback, so forth. Same thing for this offensive line. You have Slater, Latham, who are around the 22, 23 years of age.
Yeah.
You can get them on a second contract.
Right. That, like, you're not going to, unless Austin Sloatman or Cordell Volson is just like some diamond in the rough that they found in free agency, they're not getting extended. They're here as safety nets if the young guys aren't ready. But with this open competition, having those 5 guys, the cream's going to rise to the top. And I really hope it is the young guys, because if it's the young guys, that means those guys are ready. And you hope 4 of your 5 offensive linemen set for at least the next couple of years. Skoronski, if it's Coogan, if it's Slater, and then Latham. And then left tackle, of course, needs to be addressed. But it makes you feel better if you're only fixing one position on the offensive line rather than multiple like they have basically for the last half decade. Last player here, Tyjae Spears.
I'm going stock down. And it's not a good stock down.
I think it's a pretty big stock down on Tyjae Spears.
I mean, look, don't get me wrong. Tyjae Spears serves a purpose in the NFL on some team. I just don't think it's with the Tennessee Titans. And with that being said, you're going from a 2 running back backfield in Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears back to more of a bell cow style run game, in my opinion. Looking at the way Nick Singleton was used at Penn State, they kind of had that same situation like a Tony Pollard, Tyjae Spears with Katron Allen. I get it. The last couple seasons, Katron Allen took majority of those snaps, but you have to remember what type of quarterback was facilitating that offense. Drew Aller. Drew Aller is one of those guys that likes to run around in the pocket, likes to really, get a little extra time to throw a little bit. And when you have a guy in Katron Allen that's your safety net in some aspects, that's kind of where they leaned on for the most part. But in the first couple seasons when Nick Singleton was the bell cow running back, the guy was breaking through tackles. He's a solid guy. I don't see how people can overlook a guy in Nick Singleton and how he dropped that far in the draft.
I think Singleton is the Tyjae Spears replacement. Like, maybe he makes the roster, but it's a crowded room now. Tajay Spears was drafted by Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel.
Yep.
Both those guys are long gone. Mike Borgonzi, and did you watch the call with Nick Singleton, the draft call?
Yeah, the running back
where
coach.
They said, we've been holding our breath for the last 20 picks. It's like, clearly they valued Nick Singleton and felt like he could be an addition. He's not getting cut. Tony Pollard, I don't think Tony Pollard's going to get cut because he's the only reliable guy you've got in that room right now. And if you're looking for running back 3, if it's Spears, Michael Carter, Khalil Mullings, Julius Chestnut, it might just come down to who's better in special teams. And Tajay Spears, yeah, he's been a kick returner for you, but you've got Chimdike. Nick Singleton can return kicks. There just doesn't seem to be a real obvious role for Tajay Spears. I think this might be the end of the Spears era here in Nashville.
Yeah, and even when Tajay Spears returned a few kicks here and there for the Tennessee Titans, did he not drop them? A few at some time?
Well, he just wasn't as explosive as I think everybody wanted him to be, right? Like how many returners have there been around here where you're like, finally, they've got a guy who can make plays, whether it was Kyle Phillips, Tajay Spears, blanking on one more who came in, Jaquan Jackson.
Yeah.
You had all these guys who were supposed to be game changers in the return game over the past 5-10 years, and you finally found one in Chimdike. Tajay Spears, it just feels unnecessary to keep him on the roster. Maybe they value him and think that maybe they'll do a trio of Pollard, Spears, and Singleton. But I think, considering who drafted him, I think they might go with Mullings or Carter, who have familiarity with the coach or were drafted by Borgonzi, rather than Spears, who's in the last year of his contract and is probably going to move on at the end of the year anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this running back room, like you just mentioned with Spears, Carter, and Pollard, in Singleton, that is, I just see it as more of Tajay Spears being replaced by Michael Carter than Nick Singleton replacing Tajay Spears.
That could be the case too. That's going to be one of the more interesting competitions in training camp, of the back end of that running back room and who ends up sticking on the 53. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. I like it. We went stock up, stock down. A lot of these guys were the second-year players. Some of them guys whose contract is running up. There's one more player I wanted to bring up. We'll do that when we come back. We'll get your reaction as well on our phone and text lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly, next man up. 125 The Game. Next man up, 1025 The Game. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly. Wrapping up the first hour here on this Tuesday, talking Titans. We went stock up or stock down on current Titans players after the additions in free agency in the draft. We agreed stock up on Femi, Marcus Harris, Gunnar Helm, and Jackson Slater. So all of the second-year guys. Think stock up with the way they addressed player acquisition this offseason. Stock down on Cody Barton and Tajay Spears. I got one more for you, but first let's go to the phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Trey is called in. Trey, good morning. What you got for us today?
Good morning. Good morning. Hey, I just want to say, hey, I'm glad that we got the young man from Penn State. I've watched him a little bit. He's a tough dude, man, and we need that cowbell back there to basically command. We need somebody that's going to be able to be first down, second down, third down. Not somebody that's going to come in, be first down, second down, get pulled third down, and then we on the 5-yard line, and then they come in and fumble the darn ball. Tony Pollard. We don't need that. So I'm glad we got that young man to come in here. I like cold weather running backs that can play in cold weather. Kansas City, Buffalo, places like that, Washington. I like players like that. And also Cornell Tate, my minimum I would want to see Cornell Tate do is to catch 50 balls or 800 yards, whichever comes faster. That's what I want to see out of him. That's bare minimum. And I want to see Kevin Ridley. I don't want to see him blow his knees out in the first or second, third game. They don't know if it's his knee, his shin splint, his hip, his back. I want him to come out and play some darn football to alleviate some of that pain that the young man Cornell Tate is going to receive to kind of help him in the wide receiver room. But he made $50 million and ain't did nothing. So he's going to have to prove himself to Coach Sala and help this team out because the ball is in his court. And I love y'all. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thanks for the call, Trey. Man, I think he meant bell cow running back. Just flip the words there. Bell cow running back.
I'm familiar with cowbells.
Yeah, you need more cowbell, don't you? You got a fever. The only thing that can cure it is some more cowbell.
That was a really good call from Trey.
That was a good call from Trey. I hope Calvin Ridley's listening. Calvin, do not snap your leg in half this year. You hear him?
Yeah, don't do that.
You better not do it. I love that. He better not blow his knee out. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure Calvin Ridley was attempting to break his leg last year.
Yeah, that was definitely priority one on his list. Right.
But like Trey, 50 catches, 800 yards. I think that'd still be low. I mean, it'd be explosive, right? That's 16 yards a catch. So that'd be explosive. But I think I'd like to see more from him still.
Really? Even 800 yards?
He says bare minimum. Yeah, I guess 800 bare minimum. Yeah, sure. But I'd like to see more from Cornell Tate in year one, especially he's going to be your downfield threat. Calvin Ridley doesn't have that same explosiveness. Yeah, Chim DK can be a deep threat, as TD likes to put it, the transcontinental crossing routes. But Cornell Tate's going to be your, hey, one-on-one coverage, I'm throwing it up to you, go make a play on the ball. I'd like to see him exceed 800 yards for a full season. Again, provided that he stays healthy.
Sure. And one thing that Trey mentioned, all jokes aside, he makes a good point about the cold weather players. That's something that we're seeing, especially in the AFC. You go to Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, those three teams that are always contending for a top spot to go to the Super Bowl. If the Tennessee Titans kind of catch lightning in a bottle, that might be an X factor for them when it comes to these cold weather games, because he's right. Nick Singleton in a wideout at Penn State and Happy Valley, that guy is producing at the highest level. Same thing in the shoe for Cornell Tate.
Yeah. And Big Ten seems to be the way to go lately.
Oh, boy, you may have triggered something.
615-737-1025 is the phone number. Coming up next, let's talk more about the offense as a whole. I think that call actually will lead us right into where I wanted to go. Did the Titans do enough around Cam Ward this offseason? There were some good additions, but there's still question marks on the offensive side of the ball. Have the Titans put Cam Ward in a situation to succeed in year 2? We'll ask that question after this. 615-737-1025. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly, next man up. 1025 The Game. Second hour, next man up, 1025 The Game. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Continuing to talk Titans here as the draft wrapped up over the weekend. Titans added 8 players, including a hopeful new number 1 wide receiver for Cam Ward. And the question I have for you, Dr. Crane, is Did the Titans do enough around Cam Ward to set him up for success in year 2? Now, a lot of Cam Ward's development has to come from within. Like, he's got to become a more accurate passer. He's got to make better decisions in terms of taking what the defense gives to him. All of that has to come from within and in his own development. But do you think the Titans have surrounded him with enough that he's going to have a good chance to take a big step in his second season?
I'd hope so. I mean, that's not your definitive answer, but it kind of comes to the conversation we are having in the break. We're talking about matchups. Like, hopefully, for the Titans' sake, the players they brought in on offense are not just matchup based. Hopefully they're all around players. That's something that you need to see out of Cam Ward's game. Is he an all around quarterback, not just a one trick pony of scrambling outside the pocket, finding a guy on the run type thing. So again, there's a lot of development for Cam Ward's sake. There's a lot of development for a guy in Carnell Tate, and even Alec Alexander. I think that's a big jump. You got to see what these guys have done in the offseason. But on paper, I would say yes, they have done enough to put Cam Ward in a successful position. As for the play on the field, that's a wait and see game for me.
I think they've done a nice job at wide receiver for Cam Ward. You got a deep threat, vertical playmaker who you hope can become a true wide receiver 1 in Carnell Tate. That's a big investment. And we've talked about the value of Carnell Tate at number 4, but no matter where he was picked, you found a guy that you believe is going to be a go-to player for Cam Ward. That helps him. I think Wan'Dale Robinson was a great addition for this team. Now, I don't think he's going to put up the numbers he has in New York the last couple of years, which is like 90 catches a year for 1,000 yards. I think that's probably high, but you have a chain mover who can get open in short areas, and that's something that Cam Ward was missing last year. There was a lot of times where on third down, there just wasn't an easy option for him to go to with the football. I think Wan'Dale Robinson fills that role. And as I think all the shows have talked about this week, the Carnell Tate edition slots everybody into a much nicer spot. Calvin Ridley is no longer your number 1 outside wide receiver. And maybe to start the season, that's kind of what he is, but eventually he's not going to be. Chim Dike and Alec Alexander aren't being asked to be on the field for 80% of the snaps. They can be used when you need them for matchup. Like Chim Dike can become Khalif Raymond. And maybe he's better than that, but that's kind of the role I see him in when you look back to those Titans teams in 19, 20, 21. Like the guy who can come in as a deep threat, a burner, and you take a shot to him, and he's going to be great in the return game. That's a better role for Chim Dike than having to put him out there and have him be one of your starting outside wide receivers.
Yeah, I think he is a elevated version of McCole Hardman when he was with the Chiefs when they won their first Super Bowl. I think that's the best way to put it, because look, if you put Chim Dike in like those jet sweep situations, like you're talking about taking the top off the defense type thing, that's another guy where you can kind of mask your offensive identity in some way that Brian Daboll likes to maybe disguise. That opens up more opportunities for a guy like Gunnar Helm or Carnell Tate, or whoever else, Wan'Dale Robinson. That this could be one of those opportunities where it does happen that way.
And I like Chim Dike. I think he's going to play a role on offense, but by the end of last year, with Calvin Ridley hurt and just a lack of options overall, he was being put into a role that's probably bigger than what Chim Dike is ever going to be as a wide receiver. Might be one of the best returners in the league, but I don't see him ever being a number 1 or a number 2 wide receiver. I think he's a strong number 3. And Alec Alexander, he's kind of a wild card to me. I like having Alec in the room. I think he has a lot of good traits that you like, but I'm happier with him being wide receiver 5 than wide receiver 3, right? Like I think what they've done at wide receiver gives you a wide receiver room that makes sense. Tate, Ridley, Robinson are your starters. And then wide receiver 4, Chim Dike is great. Wide receiver 5, Alec is great. And then Bryce Oliver, good special teamer, wide receiver 6. I really like what they've done at wide receiver this offseason.
It's interesting how, we talk about Alec Alexander being the top target last year along with Chim Dike, and then drops immediately to 5, which I get because there are some better talents ahead of him. But at the same time, when a guy like that has put in so much work in the offseason, to me, it only tells you that wide receiver 5 is another strong position.
And that'd be great, right? Yeah. Like if Alec Alexander, what did he have last year? Like 40 catches for 400 yards or something like that. He was a solid player.
41 for 515.
Okay, so over 500 yards. I don't think he's going to get the opportunities to get over 500 this year, maybe close, but like, I do think Alec Iamaner as wide receiver 5 is a really good wide receiver 5. Where I look that the Titans didn't do enough is the offensive line and maybe a little bit in the running game. And that could be just because we talked about Jeremiah Love so much. And it's like you talked about, all right, the running game's really going to help him. And now you look at that running back room and it's fine. I think there's good options there, but it's meh, right? Like Tony Pollard, I still think is kind of a meh top running back. Maybe Singleton can take a step this year and can be a good 1-2 punch with him. But that's where I'm not saying I wish they would have done more there. I always had kind of looked at it and said, I wish you would have cut Pollard and gone and signed somebody who can be a younger version. Kenneth Walker was the example. I know Breece Hall didn't get out there, but that was always my plan. Jeremiah Love obviously entered the fray there for a little bit. Running back is meh to me, but you couldn't address everything in one offseason, right? So I don't blame them. If you're going to leave one room just kind of being average, I'm okay with it being the running back room.
Yeah, and a little bit more to the Pat Coogan front of things. Like looking back when he was playing at Indiana this past season, Indiana had 2,000-yard rushers in the backfield.
Yep.
And that is not just because of the talent of the running backs. That's because Pat Coogan opens up the interior line for some running holes. And again, those running backs at Indiana were pretty talented. Like there were a few times during the Rose Bowl game against Alabama, those running backs are literally minute fractions of space where they're going through the A gap and they're just 11 or 12 they're running through. So that give a little more credit to the running backs there. But at the same time, I think obviously the center dictates what the offensive line is going to do. If he does end up becoming one of those top end offensive linemen late from this year's draft, that could be a big plus factor. And that running back room is no longer looked at as a, backseat driver type thing.
The offensive line is the one spot where I just think you haven't set Cam Ward up for success. And a lot of it might depend on the development of young players. And we'll talk about that in a second here. But when you look at that center and right guard spot, and I know you're going to have competition and somebody's going to win and you're going to get one of those guys you hope is going to be a solid option for you. But your options right now are 6th round rookie, 5th round rookie, 5th round second-year player, journeyman who's made 18 career starts, and a player who made 50 career starts but didn't play all of last year. Like, those are your 5 options for your 2 starting spots. It doesn't really bring a whole lot of confidence, right? But until proven otherwise, I think the offensive line is downgraded this year. But what could change that is the development of young players under a guy like Carmen Brasillo coming in.
Yeah, it could definitely change the trajectory of a position group like that for sure. I try not to be, over the top with something like that with this offensive line because again, it's struggled for so long. But if you can just get 1 or 2 guys that can change that trajectory, that's all you really need, really.
And as I think everybody brings up, you can't fill every need in one offseason. And I think they did a nice job of adding some options there. And who knows? Maybe you struck gold and Pat Coogan becomes a 10-year starter at center, or Jackson Slater becomes your next 5 years at right guard. But you just don't know, right? And that's why I think there's a lot of, a little bit of hesitancy with this of like, is this offensive line going to be a disaster this year? A lot of that's going to come with the development of these young players. And I think that's what's going to define this offense this year. We'll get into that coming up next. We're asking the question, do you think the Titans did enough around Cam Ward heading into year 2 to set him up for success in 2026? 615-737-1025 is the phone number. If you want to chime in, our phone and text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Today, Vanderbilt baseball takes on MTSU at Hawkins Field. First pitch is at 3:30 p.m., and you can catch all of the action on 94.9 The Fan with coverage presented by Gary Force Acura. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly. Talking Titans offense as we come out of the draft. Have Mike Borgonzi, Robert Saleh, Brian Dable done enough around Cam Ward to give him the best chance to succeed in year 2? And I think Cam Ward's success is mostly going to come down to him. It talked about that in the last segment. It is mostly going to be about, can he work through some of the issues that he had early on, especially last season. We saw the development throughout the year. He had, 6 interceptions in the first 7 games and just 1 through the rest of the year. I don't know if that's exactly right, but he really limited the turnovers late in the season. He was starting to take what the defense gave him more often. He was getting in the end zone more often down the stretch. We saw the ascent starting to happen. This is a really important offseason for him to get the footwork right, to start to he's learning a new system with Brian Dable. He's got new weapons. A lot of this is going to come down to, if Cam Ward is a franchise quarterback, he's going to make those strides all on his own. But the situation does matter. And as we just went through, a lot of that does depend on the young players around him taking those same strides, because there is a lot of youth that is going to be at wide receiver, at tight end, on the offensive line, that are going to have to succeed in order for Cam Ward to have success.
Yeah, I'm going to take a page out of Derek Mason's book, and he's absolutely right on this. Is if Cam Ward wants to go throw at 5 a.m., go throw with the guy at 5 a.m., because he made another point of how Calvin Ridley's probably the only wide receiver that has like a true family and kids, whereas the other wide receivers are 22, 23 years old. They don't have much time but to play video games and study film. So if that's the case, go out to Centennial Park and go throw, or go to St. Thomas Sports Park or whatever, Vanderbilt Health Park now. Go throw for 5 hours or 3 hours, because you have the time to perfect your craft. Why not do that? You're getting paid for it.
Yeah, I 100% having the youth at those spots at wide receiver and tight end, I think, has to be helpful for Cam Ward, because you're right. It's not calling up a 30-year-old and saying, "Hey, I know it's your kid's birthday, but let's go throw it at Vanderbilt," or something like that. No, these are all guys that are fresh out of college, and Cam Ward, I think, has built a really nice relationship with Chimdike, Alec Iamaner, Gunnar Helm. We saw he immediately called Carnell Tate after he got drafted. I didn't hear exactly what he said, but he said something, "I'm about to text you, blah, blah, blah." I wonder if that was something like playbook, or like, "Hey, let's go meet up and throw somewhere." I don't know. But I think Cam Ward is the type of guy who he's going to put in those extra reps to try and build those relationships with these players.
And even if it is at Calvin Ridley's kid's birthday or something, do a 5v5 flag football game and run through your routes that
There
way.
you go.
I don't know, but it just seems like the young core of this Titans offense that we talked about earlier, about surrounding Cam Ward with the necessities to be successful, I think it's there. You just have to see it. So it's just that chemistry you need to build this offseason coming up.
Yeah, Cam Ward needs to take his own steps, but the Titans offense as a whole being better, from averaging under 17 points per game last year, Brian Dable's a big part of it. You're going to have a more competent play caller, 100%, than what you had last year. And you have young players that should be developing and improving. Helm, DK, Iamaner, Tate, even in his first year. On the offensive line, J.C. Latham, Jackson Slater. I would say it's unlikely all of those guys take a big step forward, but even if 4 of them, half of them, take a step forward and end up being starting caliber, maybe even, I won't say all pro caliber, but like somewhere in between, like a really good player, that's going to take this offense to the next level. So I think the story for the offense this year for the Titans is young players developing. And that starts with Brian Dable and his staff getting people in the right situations.
Yeah. And it comes back to the conversation we were having earlier with these young linemen. Again, offensive line help is integral for the Tennessee Titans to be successful this season, because if they're not, you're not going to see the success from guys like Calvin Ridley, Carnell Tate, so forth, because more than likely Cam Ward's throwing for his life back there. And again, it's a weird balance to find, because like you said, you want to see the young guys successful as the offensive lineman, but at the same time, it's not possible unless they're, not developing on the right track. Because if they're not, then you're having to force, Volson in there at right guard, or if Zeitler is potentially coming back. If that's the case, you plug him in there. You wonder what the right tackle position looks like if Latham doesn't produce. That's my biggest worry is like obviously you have Andre Dillard at left tackle. We get that. You got to make sure he is set in stone. That's my biggest worry of the tackle positions.
You mean Dan Moore?
Oh, Dan Moore. Sorry, what did I say?
You said Andre Dillard. I'm like,
Sorry.
I really hope
My heart
Andre
dropped
Dillard's
for a
not coming
second back here.
I'm having PTSD. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. No, you got to make sure your tackle positions are solidified more than your guard right now.
You got Andre Dillard at left tackle and Jalen Duncan at right tackle. And then your backups are Nicholas Petit-Frere and Dennis Daly.
I'm scarred. I'm sorry, Jake. I'm scarred. It was just such a bad run the last couple of years. Somebody take me to therapy, please.
I will say two guys that probably aren't going to get enough credit, or I don't want to say blame, but like, let's say if the Titans offense does take a huge step, two guys that I think aren't going to get talked about enough: Carmen Brasillo, Greg Lewis. That's your offensive line coach, your wide receiver coach. Those two guys are going to play such an integral role in this team because you have young players on the offensive line. You have young players at wide receiver that need to be developed. They need to be coached, especially in a new system. So those two guys, if this team does take a step forward on offense, I think Brasillo and Lewis should get a whole lot of the credit. Lewis coming over from Baltimore, had a connection with Mike Borgonzi when he was with the Chiefs. And then Brasillo obviously was the offensive line coach under Brian Daboll in New York. Those two guys have to develop the young players at their specific position groups.
Yeah. And if they don't, then I'm not saying question the coaching, but then you'll see the cycle of different coaches coming into this offensive help, that is. But Brasillo, that's a good point. And I was looking at just the timeline of it all. It doesn't seem like he overlapped with Chip Kelly, because Chip Kelly was the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach at Ohio State, having an Ohio State wide receiver in Carnell Tate.
Right.
I thought there might be some overlap there to where, might know a thing or two because, they both were in Vegas. But no, there's no overlap there. So you just got to hope that there is some development.
And I would guess Greg Lewis feels pretty confident about what Carnell Tate can do, bringing him in. So I'm excited to see training camp. Training camp's going to be fun this year, looking at specifically wide receiver and the young guys, what Wan'Dale Robinson brings as he comes in. And then, of course, having the true competitions at center and right guard. I'm sure there's been examples the last few years, but I can't remember where it's been this wide open for a starting position on the offensive line, because like even the year that right tackle was open, they basically gave it to Nicholas Petit-Frere right off the bat. So I'm interested to see what training camp looks like as some of these young guys compete with the veteran players out there.
And also, going back to the wide receiver point real quick, we talked about Alec Eilman being like wide receiver 5 at this point. The size is there. Like, he's 6'2".
He's big and fast.
Yeah. Like Carnell Tate, 6'2", 6'3". Like, look at that as a red zone threat for the both of them. That's how I perceive it.
I think Alec Eilman might end up being your red zone guy. Like, I talked about Denzel Boston as a guy that I really liked. I don't know if he specifically fits what Brian Daboll wants to do. He's not quite as fast. He's not as great of a route runner, but he's a jump ball kind of guy. I wonder if Eilman plays that role a little bit, because he is probably Tate's great at contested catches too. He was one of the best in the country at Ohio State, but I think Eilman proved last year one of his best traits was the ability to make catches in tough situations.
And I think that's what sets you apart from being a top-end wide receiver in the NFL, is the contested catches conversation. If you're not going up there for the football and you're not winning those aerial duels or one-on-ones in those cases, then you're not going to last long in this league. You really are not.
Yeah, especially when you're that size and you're that frame for Alec Eilman. I mean, he got off to a great start in Denver. If only the coach knew an elbow equals 2 feet. He had a couple other nice contested catches too. Nevada Josh on the text line says, here's my hot take. Coogan will be the Titans' Tyler Linderbaum. Go ahead and laugh now, but I truly think he has that much potential. I'm going to say slow your roll a little bit, Josh. I like Pat Coogan. I think that was a good pick for a 6th round player. I think you got value there. Tyler Linderbaum was a 1st round pick. So Pat Coogan has a lot to prove that he can even be a starting level center, let alone a Pro Bowl level center who's getting paid, what, $27 million a year now? I like Coogan, but apples to oranges there in terms of comparing the prospects. 7146 This is Jude, says, Jake, I'm going to advocate for Taylor Zarzour to announce touchdown Tater like the announcers did at Ohio State. I like that. Tater, that's a great nickname for Carnell Tate.
Yes, Tater.
Tater Tot.
Tater.
Yeah, I don't like that one as much.
Yeah. I played high school football. The guy's name was Tate, and we just call him Tater.
Yeah. No, I think that one will stick.
He was a left guard, so it fit.
Tater fits better for an offensive lineman than it does for a wide receiver. Like, I do imagine like Jennings Dunker, the guard with the mullet who got taken by the Steelers out of Iowa. Like, that's a guy I can imagine, like, that's Tater down in the trenches. It's like, I don't really see it with Carnell Tate, but I think it'll stick.
Yeah, we used to joke like, oh, we want pancakes and tater tots because like pancake blocks is what you want. So yeah, it'd be cool. Yeah, get Tater as on the touchdown call. That would be neat.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get back into the Titans in the 11 o'clock hour. We talked a lot of offense early in the show. I do want to touch on the defense. I went back through Robert Saleh's defenses with the 49ers and the Jets, and there was an interesting trend that may not bode well for the Titans, and we'll get to that coming up at 11. But I did want to touch on college football, college sports in general, as the NCAA possibly changing its eligibility rules coming up this summer. We'll talk about it coming up next. 615-737-1025. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly. Talked a lot of Titans in the first half of the show. We'll get back to the Titans at 11 a.m., but the NCAA possibly changing their eligibility rules, making it an age-based system where athletes would receive 5 years of eligibility beginning at age 19 or upon their high school graduation, whichever comes first. So this could be put into effect as early as mid-May and basically gets rid of the redshirt year. It says, all right, when you graduate high school or you turn 19, you've got 5 years. If you're healthy all 5 years and you're ready to play, you can play all 5 seasons. But there's going to be less leeway for waivers and all that kind of stuff to get eligibility. It takes away a lot of the gray area when it comes to eligibility that we've dealt with the last couple of years. So I like it. I think this is a step forward towards more common sense of what the modern landscape of college sports look like, and we'll see how it plans out.
It doesn't, I assume it wouldn't play a factor into the early enrollees, would it? Like for their clock?
I think that's a good question.
Because like if you're, let's say, Joe Schmo from Sumner County and you're enrolling in to play at Vanderbilt.
Well, so like Jared Curtis this year could be an example of like he enrolled early. You get 5 years from when you graduate high school. So
if they graduate early, yes, the clock would start.
Yes, but the 5 years would start after the season had already ended, correct?
Right. That's what I'm gathering.
I think you would be fine anyway. You wouldn't lose a full year.
Correct. So it doesn't really matter.
Right. Okay. So it wouldn't be an issue.
That's what I thought.
I do look at a couple of things that would concern me with this. And I wrote one thing down that I saw isn't an issue. Like BYU, they have mission trips that they do for a lot of their athletes that they will go on a mission trip for 2 years and they won't start college until they're 20 or 21. So how would that affect them? Apparently there is an exception for religious-based, deals. I don't know. Like, so they're not going to be hard and fast with the rule. There's going to be exceptions for some things.
Religious and military exemptions?
Yes, I think that's probably what it would be. I will say, though, does this mean that the Australian punters are going to cease to exist? Because all those guys come over when they're like 27.
Yeah, that would be a little unfortunate.
Tough.
Because then you also have the Hawaii kicker that just got drafted, the Tokyo Toe.
Yes.
I mean, he set so many records in Hawaii. I mean,
right.
That would hurt people like that as well.
That's what I wonder is there going to be exceptions for like international people? Because again, the college football has made a living with Australian punters the last few years, and all of those guys are grown men when they come over. Like I wonder how that's going to work out. They're going to have to work through some things with this. College hockey has had the most pushback to this because they have their system of the delayed enrollment with juniors. So these kids will play 2-3 years of junior hockey before going to college at 20 or 21. And will they be able to change it? Like, I don't think Charlie Baker and the NCAA is going to make an exception just for one sport. That's going to be part of this as well, is will specific sports, based on how they usually did their recruiting and their eligibility, will they have to adjust to this new format? And could that change the way the sports look?
Ooh, I feel like right now hockey has a really good format. College hockey, that is. Like, like you just mentioned, play a couple years in juniors, potentially get drafted by an NHL team. Your rights are there. You're going to play for Michigan State or whoever is in the Frozen Four. That is tough because I could see how this 5-year window would work towards basketball or football because those sports bring in the most money. If that's the case, to me, it kind of comes back to the whole NIL breakaway league type thing for football. Is do your breakaway league, have your 5-year minimum or 5-year maximum, and then go about your day and leave all the other sports to be treated as like NCAA club sports, if that makes sense.
I think eventually football might break away. Like that one, it's down the road, and like there's so many changes in college sports that we just don't know what it's going to look like 5 or 10 years from now. But I do think this is a good idea in general of just getting rid of the gray area of red shirts and waivers, right? Like there's all these questions of like, oh, is he going to be eligible this year? This gets rid of a lot of it. And of course, they're going to have to work out some kinks. The article I'm reading says that the framework would largely eliminate red shirts and waivers with narrow exceptions. Military service, religious missions, and pregnancy would all be covered under it. So I guess that
Interesting.
covers
Okay.
a lot of bases there.
Yeah.
But I do think it would take some adjustments, and I think it might hurt college sports initially because current players would all get an extra year, right? Now they did say that like your eligibility is expired this year. You do not get another year. I'm trying to make this as simple as possible.
Yeah.
Here. So like the players who graduated this year ran out of eligibility. I know there's been a couple of guys and girls who have entered the transfer portal without eligibility, hoping they'd get another. They are not grandfathered in. So once your eligibility runs out, Charlie Baker said, you're done. But I do believe that the current players would get another year, which coaches do a lot of planning, I'm sure, with, scholarship charts and like what's our team going to look like in 2026 and 2027 and so on and so forth, that having players stay for another year, that changes the way their team looks. That could change the way pro leagues look as less players would go out. So there's a lot of kinks that would have to be worked out with this if it is put into effect.
Let's take a step back for a quick second, Jake. What you just read there was just specifically talking only about red shirts, correct?
For the
enrollment.
So it says red shirts and waivers would largely be eliminated under the framework,
Okay.
narrow exceptions for military service, etc.
Okay, so that's waivers and red shirts. To me, the other factor that comes into this is the gray shirts, the blue shirts, and the green shirts. And I'm not joking either. I'm talking about like the actual gray shirts, those high school recruits who delay full-time enrollment to spring semesters in the following year to save scholarship spots. So like you look at that and say, is that a strategy for colleges to add an extra scholarship spot? And you look at the blue shirts, the players that are unrecruited student athletes. So basically it allows them to play, but not on a full year of scholarship. Does that also play a factor into their actual, their clock? Because again, they're a college athlete, but they're not a scholarship athlete.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think they'd probably have to change some way, like the way things work, right? Like it would change. And the last few years with COVID years and the, lawsuits and stuff,
sure,
things have changed, but forever it's been, you get 5 years to play 4. Now you're adding that extra year. It's going to change a lot of the way that the behind the scenes stuff works with roster management and all that. So it's very interesting. They're making a lot of changes, trying to rein in college sports right now, which is, it's turned into the wild, wild west is like the word everybody uses. But they're trying to
consolidate.
Yeah. I don't want to say fix some of the issues, but update the structure of college sports for the modern time that we're living in. And we're seeing a lot of these rule changes. I saw that the portal window is an example. They've shortened the portal window to just 1, and there's nothing in the spring. And if I'm not mistaken, Parker, did you see this too, that I guess that they're going to really enforce if a player transfers outside of the portal window? Like,
yeah.
Possible like big fines or like suspension
the
of
school
the coach.
gets fined, and then the head coach could miss up to 50% of the season.
Wow. Okay. So so they're enforcing that, which it reins in transfers a little bit.
Right.
I saw that they might do something with tampering too, of like the benefit of the doubt is going to go the other way. Like you have to prove you didn't tamper to get a recruit rather than someone else has to prove that you did.
Interesting.
Maybe I just saw that on social media. So they're trying to make a whole lot of changes because there's obviously college sports has changed a ton in the last 5 years. So this one will be very intriguing how it works out, going from the 5 to play 4 to 5 to play 5 model that is being proposed coming up this summer.
Yeah. The reason why I brought up the different shirt colors of the recruiting aspect of it all is you talk about, we both talk about just consolidating and just structuring this a little bit more, conglomerate all that, where everybody is held to the same standard of not a green shirt, not a blue shirt, not a red shirt, whatever. You have to have a baseline of just something that represents
right. I think that's what they're trying to do is like, all right, if you are in the class of 2026 for high school, you come out like you're graduating from high school next month or in June. Your last chance to play college sports will be the spring of 2031. Right? Like that's
Right.
it. And it's like no exceptions except for the three things that we just read off. Will they be able to enforce it? Right? Like we've seen lawsuits and all this stuff. Like the NCAA is working in a very tumultuous time right now. So I do like that they're making an effort here. How is it actually going to work is going to be the big question. Will it be effective in practice, even though it looks good on paper?
I know we're against the clock here, but like, say if I were to go back to college and play college athletics, I didn't play a down of football in college,
Yeah,
but
all your eligibility still there.
is it still there? Is that
I
what
don't
we're
know.
getting at?
I don't know. Like I guess no, probably, right?
That's wild. That's so wild because then you look at these NAIA schools again. This doesn't fall under the NCAA rule, but like you got NAIA schools, you got players that are 31 playing. Like I just make it make sense to me.
Are you fielding offers from schools to go back?
Look, if I want to get my master's degree in something, I'd be more than happy to facilitate a deal if that's the case.
There you go. Coaches, Nick Frazier on the market, and it wouldn't count as a transfer, so he can join you anytime.
Yeah, I can kick a mean PAT, man.
And you've graduated too, so
I have.
graduate transfers can transfer anytime, I think. So there you go. You're in the clear.
Clark, be ready.
615-737-1025 is the phone number. We'll take your thoughts on this coming up next. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 1025 The Game. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly alongside you. College sports possibly changing again with a 5-5 rule from the NCAA, giving athletes a chance to play 5 seasons in the 5 years following either their 19th birthday or their graduation from high school, whichever comes earliest. Something I just got a text on my personal text line saying something that you may not think about this because it's not a big deal, but it would change the way you look at the history books is all the records would be broken if you give athletes an extra year just universally, right? Like all of the career records would be shattered because you're giving in football an extra 12 to 16 games. In basketball, it's another 30 to 40 games. Baseball, it's another 60 games. Like you're giving athletes more opportunities. So it's like when we talk about doing something in 16 games versus 17 games in the NFL. What are you going to count as the actual record? That's a point that I hadn't thought of.
Yeah, and also you factor in like the whole LeBron Michael Jordan conversation of like LeBron won 6 titles, I mean LeBron Michael Jordan won 6 titles. LeBron's only won 4, and he's been to 10 though.
Yeah.
So like it's a different way of looking at it, like sports inflation because of different eras.
Yeah.
A lot of these college
I saw that video too this weekend.
Yeah, and I love that account. Sports ball, it's incredible.
Yeah, and it's a really good point of like athletes are getting better as time goes on. So yeah, how do you value accomplishments in 2026 versus accomplishments in 1960? Like it's a very interesting conversation.
I think defenses are a little bit more, talking about football specifically, are a little bit more dynamic than they were back in the 80s and 70s and whatever it may be. Like you could just have a freak of nature as a running back and he'd just set, the all-time record in NCAA football.
Right.
It's a little different now.
Yeah. No, and that's not to say that there weren't great players back then, but just the average talent has gone up exponentially over the past few years. So I mean, yes, the greats of back then still great players, but you have to look at who they were playing against, right? The old argument is like, oh, they were playing against plumbers. Like that's probably an exaggeration, but the average level of talent has gone up a huge amount over the past half century.
So would you put an asterisk next to all these accolades if they do get broken?
I think you'd at least have to look at it differently, right? Like career records. Do you start doing it on a per game basis of all right, well, yeah, let's say X quarterback threw for 17,000 yards in his career or whatever it is, but he did it in 5 full seasons. And I think Bailey Zappi still holds the all-time record for passing yards in a career
40
at Western Kentucky.
Season, I believe,
so would you view that differently based on how many years they played? I don't know. That's but that's something that would play into this.
And back-to-back Heismans too. You got to think about that too.
Right. Yeah. Awards. Because but I will say if you win back-to-back Heismans, I would really hope you're not spending all 5 years in college. Like you probably should be going to the pros at that point.
I don't know. NIL, man, it's changing.
1880 says, I believe a player should be able to transfer once in their NCAA career. That's something that they're working on. I don't know if it goes back to the the free one-time transfer, and then you have to sit out a year after that. But again, that's another rule that could come into effect. 4702 asks, how would this affect a gap year, like going to a prep school? I don't know. That's a very good question. Because if you go to there are plenty of players who go to a JUCO or a prep school, and it's like, all right, you play 1 year there, and then you go to a 4-year college. Does your clock start? That's they're going to have to address all of this if they actually put the rule change into effect. There's going to have to be detailed lists of what counts and what doesn't, because the last thing that the reason the NCAA is doing this is to get rid of confusion. So you better make it black and white and get rid of any confusion.
If anything, if I were the NCAA on the board of committee or whatever this is, I would put a age limit. We're talking 31 years old is the maximum, I think, is the best.
31.
I don't know.
No, and I get it
because Brandon Weeden was 30 at Oklahoma State at some point.
Yeah, how old was? Well, and then here's an example for you that I think would be a good curveball to this rule. How about Hayden Hurst, who was drafted to the MLB, went and played minor league baseball, and I think he got the yips, didn't he? Something like that. It was a mental thing. and he had to quit, went back to South Carolina and played football. How many years would he have to play? Like there's that's going to be a question that comes with this. That's why the NCAA is going to have to, you're going to have like a flow chart of something of like, all right, do you fall into one of these categories? Great. You get to start your clock when you enroll at college. If you don't, your clock starts the day you graduate from high school.
Yeah. That is a tough call because if say one guy goes to another sport, like for example, Nashville Sounds baseball player that
what's his name? Monte Harrison.
Yeah, Monte Harrison went to what, Arkansas to be a tight end.
Monte Harrison played like he was part of the Christian Yelich trade?
I believe so.
I think he was included in the Christian Yelich trade, and now he's back at Arkansas playing wide receiver. Like, how does that play into this too? I think it's really interesting. John says this isn't Van Wilder. 25 should be the max. Well, it's not it's about the circumstances that happen before they get to college.
Right.
But I don't know how they're going to deal with that. It seems like it's going to be, sorry, you better come out of high school or you're not going to get to play a full 5 years of college athletics.
I think not 31 being a maximum age limit. I think maybe 28. I think that's the
Well,
right.
I guess it just depends on.
I'm just saying if you've never played college athletics.
Right. But it depends on how you get there.
Right.
Like, because they do have the exceptions, like the religious missions or military service. Like, are you going to put a hard cap on it for those types of people who are coming in late? But I think if it's not one of those, the three exceptions that we talked about, military service, religious mission, or pregnancy, which, was an interesting one to throw in there, then I think you probably have to just deal with it, right? Like, I think that's why the NCAA is doing this, is basically saying, we're going to remove any of these. Well, what if this and what if that? No, you get 5 years from when you graduate high school. If you don't come to college immediately, or if you do something else, great. Your clock has started when you join. You've got until you turn 24 or whatever it is.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you. Another curveball we're talking here. It's the pregnancy aspect of all this.
Great.
Say there is a college football player coming out of high school and is committed to Joe Schmo University, right? And let's say he is married right out of high school.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and he has a kid with a lady, and the lady is, taking care of the kid, but he's not enrolled yet, but is still committed to play at that XYZ university.
So does that apply to the father as well? I don't know.
Because let's say the
Holy
mother.
Cow, we are getting carried away.
I know we've gotten into the weeds here.
That's
just
what the
because of
NCAA's
the NCAA including that in there. I would say no.
Well, you never know. Let's say the male figure needs to be a big integral part into the development of this young child.
I mean, there are several basketball players with kids, and they're still playing.
There was a stretch at Virginia Tech where, like, when I was in school, where 4 straight freshmen came into Virginia Tech's basketball team with kids. And it's like, I mean, they dealt with it. It was probably very tough for them to balance basketball, being a dad, and school. But I don't think that's going to fall into the category.
Well, I'm just saying, at the time, it wasn't in the rule book that way. It wasn't written up that way. So, I mean, now that's in the rule book.
There you go. If Charlie Baker is listening, which he's not, maybe you have to include, does being a father play into an exception as well? 615
a certain amount of paternity leave.
737-1025 is the phone number. May apparently is when this could be voted on, so we will have to see. But Charlie Baker said yesterday they feel very optimistic about getting this passed. So could be a new change in the eligibility rules in college sports coming up over the next couple of months. 615-737-1025. When we come back into the Titans, Robert Saleh's defenses, widely regarded as being some of the best in the league. But I looked back at his time in San Francisco, his time with the Jets. There's a trend that may not bode well for the 2026 version of a Robert Saleh defense with the Titans. We'll talk about it coming up next. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Final hour, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly with you. We are broadcasting live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Been a fun show so far. Back into the Titans here to start the 11 a.m. hour. We will talk some Nashville SC later this hour, too. We got Dr. Crane in here in a massive game tonight over at Geodis Park. So we are excited for that one. Nashville SC trying to get the advantage in the first leg of their semifinal match against Tigres and move on to the championship.
Let me just put this into perspective real quick.
Yep.
A little tease. Nashville SC won the U.S. Open Cup last season. They can now win a championship that basically says you rule all of North America.
Yeah.
So let's just put that into factor. They rule all of the United States of America with the U.S. Open Cup. They could rule the entire North American continent.
Right. And an automatic berth into the Club World Cup if they were to win this tournament. So
Correct.
They are in the semifinals against Mexican club Tigres. Leg one of their two-leg aggregate starts tonight over at Geodis Park. We'll talk about that at the bottom of the hour. But we talked a lot of offense in the first hour and into the second hour about what Cam Ward can do in year two, what they've put around him. But I wanted to check on the Titans defense because I think there is a lot of optimism around that side of the ball. Robert Saleh, known for coordinating great defenses, and even when he was the head coach and not calling plays with the Jets, his defenses were towards the top of the league. I did find a little bit of a trend here that maybe just a coincidence, but in his first year as the defensive coordinator with San Francisco, they finished 24th in yards per game defensively. So bottom quarter of the league. After that, went 13th, 2nd, 5th in his final 3 years as the defensive coordinator. So you saw the growth into being an elite defense across the league. First year as the head coach of the Jets, 32nd in scoring and in points. Now, he wasn't calling plays, so that may be part of it as well. But then his last 3 years as the head coach of the Jets, 4th, 3rd, 3rd. So, yes, he has pretty consistently had his defenses towards the top of the league, but as he's put his system into place, his first year at the last 2 stops, things have not quite gone as well as you'd expect them to. Do you worry about that a little bit with the Titans of him changing this system? You're going from the 3-4 to a 4-3. You're trying to merge the old players who are already here with some of the new players they brought in. Do you think it can work with Robert Saleh in 2026?
I think it can work because the previous stops, like, let's be honest, we both know the Jets are a dumpster fire of an organization. I think that was more of you were thrown into a bad situation. So the fact that after that first season, things were 4th, 3rd, and 3rd, to me shows that's more Robert Saleh than it is the organization. As for the previous stop before that, which was San Francisco, I think that's the early stages of a Kyle Shanahan. You get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
That was the first stint for Saleh being there in San Francisco. So yeah, 24th, I get it. But I think that's just more of they were trying to understand what they had as a whole, as a roster standpoint and also coaching standpoint, because that we really didn't know the true, emphasis of how important Kyle Shanahan was offensively and also what Robert Saleh was capable of doing defensively as well. So I think that was just the beginning of all that.
Yeah, I think it's probably more coincidence than anything, but the 32nd, his first year as the head coach of the Jets is a little strange to me. I know that they were a young defense at that point and dealt with some injuries, but they were dead last in scoring and in yardage. I just wonder if it takes a year to get everybody more comfortable in the system. Now, I think the good news that you have to look at is there are holdovers. There are guys, everybody made a big deal about, they're only signing Saleh guys. They're only signing Daboll guys. Maybe Saleh realizes that when he went to the Jets and changed their system up, that there was a learning curve to it. And by adding players who have already played in that system, Jermaine Johnson, John Franklin Myers, Tony Adams as your third safety, maybe that is his way of trying to soften the blow of making this switch from the system the Titans were running last year under that coaching staff, Brian Callahan and Denard Wilson, to what they're going to run this year under Robert Saleh.
Exactly what Jim Knowles is doing at Tennessee. He's doing the same thing, bringing guys that he's been familiar with working
Right.
with, bringing assistants, bringing players. Saleh didn't do that when he went to New York. Saleh didn't do that when he was in San Francisco. Now he's bringing over players that he's worked with and coaches that he's worked with, so it makes sense.
I do want to check, who was the defensive coordinator for the Jets in his first stint there? Because that could play a role as well. He has Gus Bradley.
Ulbrich?
Jeff Ulbrich, who Jeff Ulbrich has proven to be a pretty good defensive coordinator across the league. But I do think with Saleh calling plays, maybe that will help, again, make this a little bit of an easier transition. He knows what he wants. They've acquired players that fit what his defense is supposed to do. I do think in the long run, the Titans defense looks like it's going to be really solid. You're still going to get couple more years out of Jeffrey Simmons. I would guess he gets an extension at some point. John Franklin Myers is under contract for 3 years. You brought in Keldrick Falk. You've got guys in the secondary now with Flott and Taylor and Winston. So like the pieces are there to start to elevate this defense. Of course, Anthony Hill in the middle as your green dot linebacker. I think over the long term, like 2027, this defense could be really good, especially if you add a couple more pieces. But I do wonder if maybe we have overhyped how good this defense can be in just 1 year, given that a lot of these guys are going to have to adjust to new roles in Robert Saleh's defense.
Yeah, I think you could say it's a little overhyped, but it's just in courtesy of the expectation Robert Saleh brings. I think that's the big thing, is that he's known for developing young talent, and that's why everybody has such high expectations for this defense.
Right.
So that's that factor. As to your point about the Jets and why they were ranked so high offensively in scoring, to me, I think it relies more on the running back room. Again, the first year they didn't have Breece Hall. The years after that, they did have Breece Hall.
Yeah.
I think the stability of the run game allowed them to manage the clock a little bit offensively. I'd have to go back and look at the time.
Having Zach Wilson as your quarterback, and that was rookie Zach Wilson at that point.
Right.
Like that probably didn't help with the defense, giving them short fields, although they were 32nd in yards per game too. But I agree with you that the offense does play a role in that as well.
And the factor that I'm trying to tie into that with the Titans this year is you have Nick Singleton. You drafted a running back under the Saleh era. And obviously Daboll is on board with it as well. But when you have a running back that I perceive to be one of those bell cow running backs that can help manage the clock a little bit and or catapult you into taking the top off the defense with a wide receiver, it gives your defense more opportunities to rest and also more opportunities to shut down the opposing offense.
That's a good point too. That it has to be complementary football. Your offense has to help your defense and vice versa. I bring this up just because I do think coming out of the draft, I did this too. It's like looking at that front four and the depth they have there. And now you've got the linebacker and Hill, and there's good pieces in the secondary. It's like, man, this defense could be really, really good this year. I think bringing this trend up is just to say, even if it's not elite in year one, that doesn't mean that Saleh's coaching isn't working, right? Like it could just take a little bit of time for them to settle things in and find the right pieces that fit where Robert Saleh wants them. I don't think they're going to be 32nd in defense this year, right? Like there's too much talent on this defense and Robert Saleh knows what he's doing. I wonder if they're going to be middle of the pack this year. And people may view that as a disappointment given the investment they've made on defense with players and Robert Saleh's pedigree as a defensive coordinator. But I do think this is a process. You didn't sign these players. You didn't hire Robert Saleh for just 1 year. You hired them to try and get this team back into playoff contention. So I guess I bring this up just to say, even if it's not a top line defense in year one, that doesn't mean that it's not going to develop into that as the years go on.
I mean, obviously last year the Titans defense was abysmal, but what would you say obviously it's a big improvement up 12 spots, but top 20 defense for Robert Saleh in year one is somewhat of a success?
Well, so I wrote it down. They were 28th in points per game, 21st in yards last year. So I think if you are top half of the league in both, that's a big step. And I know that you may look at it and say, with Saleh and the corners they signed, the draft picks they made, like, oh, this team could be a top 10 defense. And it's possible, right? Like, it's not out of the question. But I think my expectation would be go from a defense that has been poor for the last couple of years to a defense that is solid. Like, you don't have to be elite this year, but go to a defense that's solid, that turns the ball over way more than they've been doing over the past couple of seasons, that doesn't allow as many explosive plays as they have the last couple of seasons. I think that's going to be what I look for, rather than them having to be this shutdown, lockdown defense. They just got to get back to being solid, and hopefully that builds into being one of those elite groups in the future.
Yeah, kind of just absorbing the pressure rather than having to really pounce on it and be the definitive factor
Right.
of it all. If you can absorb it and just basically not hold on for dear life.
Bend but
just,
don't break.
Thank you. Bend but don't break. My goodness. Couldn't think of that. Thank you, Jake. Yeah, bend but don't break, and just allow your offense to do all the dirty work in a roundabout way.
615-737-1025. We want your thoughts. What do you think this Titans defense can do in year one under Robert Saleh, knowing that in his last 2 stops, year one has not exactly been his best, but it has developed into top 5 defenses in both San Francisco and New York. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly. Next man up, 1025, The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly with you. Looking at the Titans' defense under Robert Saleh, what should the expectations be in year one? Looking back through the trends, his time in San Francisco and New York both started with below-average seasons. In San Francisco, his first year, they were 24th in yardage, 32nd in yardage and scoring in his first year with the Jets. I will say, though, Mike Borgonzi and this front office have done a really nice job of building this defense to Robert Saleh's specifications, right? Like the defensive line, he says, I want to rush in waves. They've got waves. There are 10 guys who I would feel really confident getting decent playing time on that front line. Jackie Marshall would be kind of borderline there, 6th-round pick, but you've got Simmons and Franklin Myers and Johnson and now Falk and Oladejo, Martin, so on and so forth. Harrell, Elliott, Solomon Thomas. Like the list goes on and on. They are deep on the defensive line. You got him a green dot linebacker who fits, as Mike Borgonzi said, the prototype of what Robert Saleh wants in his Mike linebacker. You got him 2 outside cornerbacks who are highly regarded on the free agent market. Yes, I do think that there might be a learning curve with the Saleh defense, and maybe it does take a couple of games, but I think this team will be above average on defense, solid, as I said, or as Nevada Josh says, a defense that's solid defense from Robert Saleh that is peaking towards the end of the season, right? I think there's going to be growth throughout the year. You may start, depending on the schedule, right? You don't know who you're playing to start the season. There could be some games where you're like, man, this solid defense was supposed to be this good early on, but I do think it's going to elevate throughout the season. And by the end of the year, you might be looking at this defense as one of the better units across the AFC.
Yeah, because if you can get that production, not only from the defensive line, but just the interior linebackers, just out of the box. Like we were talking earlier about Cody Barton. He's really going to have to find himself a true spot on this defense. I think if you can just at least get, I'd say half the production you got last year out of them, this team, you're right, Jake, could be near the top end of the AFC South.
When we talk about expectations, we've talked a lot about Carnell Tate and what we expect from him in year one and beyond. What would your expectations be for Keldrick Falk in year one? Because I think it's interesting with him. He has the traits. He's big. He's quick. He can play inside. He can play outside. But he only had 2 sacks last year at Auburn. What would you expect from Keldrick Falk in year one?
I'm thinking at least like 6.5 sacks, right? I feel like that has to be the baseline. You're a first-round pick.
Yeah.
I have more expectation on Keldrick Falk than I do Carnell Tate because of obviously we talk about the depth and how deep it is with that interior defensive line and the edge rushers. But I think that's a guy you spend a first-round pick on. You have to get immediate production out of that. We've talked in the past about guys like Will Anderson and Aiden Hutchinson, how those are top 10, top 5 talents that are blue-chip players. The Titans seem to look at this guy as a blue chip player, even though he's at the end of the first round. You got to have blue chip talent out of him.
Yeah, I don't know if I would put him in the blue chip category, but he's definitely a first round talent with what you've seen from him athletically. And I think there were a lot of, the Jadeveon Clowney almost sacks at Auburn. He had 30 pressures this past year. So it's like, yes, he didn't hit the quarterback as much as you'd like to, but you saw the ability to shed blockers, the ability to get into the backfield and make plays in both the run game and in the pass game. 6.5 sacks, I think, is reasonable. I'm looking here at the 49ers stats. I want to see what were some of their, based on how he used them. I kind of want to know what he expects from the 4th and 5th guys on that defensive line, which is what I expect Keldrick Falk to be. Football Reference usually is very easy to maneuver, but it's not helping me today. So I don't know. I think 6.5, I think that's a fine expectation for him, right? Like maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, but he definitely can't be a 2-sack guy like we saw at Auburn last year.
Yeah, I mean, if it gives you any more of a baseline to look at, John Franklin Myers, when he was in New York, first year he had, before Saleh got there, 3 sacks. And then following that, when Saleh got there, 21, 22, 23, 6 sacks, 5 sacks. And then it kind of dipped off at the end at 3.5. But he saw some more production once he got to Denver at 7 sacks and 7.5. So again, it kind of gives you a little bit of a baseline when it comes to that. You all right with that?
Yeah, sorry. These stats have to be wrong.
Are they inflated? They're like 20 sacks?
No, it's the opposite. It says that the most sacks for the Niners last year was 4 in a game or in a season.
Yeah, I don't think that's
Were
right.
they the worst sack team in the league last year? Because maybe these are right. And I know they had injuries too, right? Like you were missing Bosa for 14 games. Nick Bosa finished 4th on the team in sacks, playing 3 games last season. Michael Williams only played 9 games. So, the injuries, of course, have to play a role in that too. I think that's right. They only had like 20 sacks last year.
Wow. That is
So that is something to keep an eye on too, of like, was that an injury thing last year where they just didn't have the top end talent that he's going to have this year? Or, could that play out here as well? I don't know.
so according to NFL.com, the 49ers had 27 sacks.
Yeah, I might have just done the math wrong. But
Because their total sack yards was 161.
Bryce Huff led the team in sacks with 4. He played 15 games. Cleveland Farrell was tied. He played 8 games. He had 4 sacks. And then Nick Bosa, he had 2 sacks in 3 games. He finished 4th on the team, according to Football Reference. So
they were tied bottom 5 of the league for sacks.
right. So maybe just a down year. Let's look at the Jets from the year before, because that could or not the year before. He wasn't there for the full year, but let's go 2 years ago for the New York Jets. So 2023 for the Jets. What did they do sack wise? Let's see. Here we go. So sacks. The leader in sacks was Bryce Huff again with 10. Jermaine Johnson had 7.5. Quentin Jefferson had 6. Quentin Williams had 5.5. Solomon Thomas had 5. So I think you look and you say, 5 to 6 to 7 sacks probably would be fair for Keldrick Falk.
Yeah, and looking on NFL.com, they're saying in 2023 the Jets were top 5 in sacks.
There you go.
So there you go.
I think last year the injuries were just so prevalent. Like Warner was down, Bosa was down. You lost your first round pick in Michael Williams for most of the year. Like it's tough for any team to get through all of those injuries. And guess what? They still made the playoffs and were 1 game away from being the 1 seed in the NFC. So with Robert Saleh, I think you have to keep expectations reasonable. But I do think this team should take a step forward on defense. It's just a question of how big of a step that is. I would guess they're top half of the league, maybe not top quarter of the league. 8 to 16 in terms of yardage and scoring, I think would be a really solid first year for Robert Saleh.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier to you, like if they're a top 20 defense or just even top 15 is a little bit of a stretch, but if they're in that ballpark of 20 to 15 range overall as a defense, that is a huge success to me.
615-737-1025 is the phone number if you have thoughts. Lots of good Titans stuff today on the show. Went offense, went defense. But we're going to move on to Nashville SC because they have a huge game coming up tonight. Dr. Crane going to give us the lowdown on the matchup between the boys in gold and Tigres coming up tonight at Geodis Park. 615-737-1025. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly. Next man up. 125 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, and Parker Kelly alongside you on your Tuesday morning. We got 30 minutes left in the show. Chasing Big Joe taking over at the top of the hour. Lots of Titans talk today. Do want to transition here because there is a big game going on in Nashville tonight. Nashville SC advancing to the semifinals of the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Leg one of that match begins tonight against Tigres right here at Geodis Park. Dr. Crane, we talked about it to start the hour. This is one of the biggest games that's been played at Geodis Park since the inception of the franchise, right? Like the League's Cup final probably still supersedes it at this point, but you've got a chance if you can win in this two-leg aggregate with Tigres to go play for a championship in the CONCACAF Champions Cup and a spot in the Club World Cup.
I've been around just, covering this team for the last 2 to 3 seasons, and the League's Cup final was definitely up there. I think if they win this game tonight and they end up going advancing to the final, to me, that I feel like the first leg of this semifinal CONCACAF Champions Cup will be the biggest match ever won for Nashville SC, unless they win the final of the CONCACAF Champions Cup.
Right.
But I just think it sets a new standard for soccer in Middle Tennessee. And I believe if Nashville wins tonight at home, and obviously regulation because the aggregate, I think it'd be their 100th win at Geodis Park.
Wow.
So, or for the club, one of the two. So that's something to keep a factor into. Nashville this past weekend when they took on Charlotte just looks depleted as a club right now. They don't have a lot of their integral pieces to their roster. They don't have a lot of those players that can really, absorb pressure and then go on the counterattack. I think when Nashville, something that really struck a chord with me is that they took advantage of their opportunities. And that was something we haven't seen the last 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Because of, injuries with Sam Surge, with the day-to-day hamstring injury that was listed, that he put those issues to bed this past Saturday. He was subbed on in the 45th minute to start the second half and scored a brace. I believe that was his 3rd or 4th brace of his career. I think 11th multi-goal game as well. So, this guy is hitting new accolades when it comes to playing for Nashville SC. But to know that you have a healthy Sam Surge going into the first leg of the semifinals against Tigres, one of the most historic and prolific clubs in all of Mexico, as a club base that is. And again, they're no slouch of a away team, because this is going to be a big part of tonight is the fan bases. If Nashville can get a big win behind this fan base, that puts them over the edge. But when you get to play in front of those Tigres fans, it's a different breed. That is going to be a tough place to at least get a win on the road and or just a result in general.
Yeah, and we talked about it in the past 2 legs of the away goals matter more. Yeah. So tonight is a really important game for Nashville to try and limit what Tigres can do on the attack. And if you can get out with an advantage and head out to Mexico either 1-0 or 2-1, that puts you in a much better spot. Winning at home is so crucial in this tournament because a draw at home or a draw on the road is basically a loss for the road team, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to be able to win on the road, and Nashville defending their home turf would be really huge tonight.
And let me just put a factor in this as well. Nashville, they conceded 2 goals over the weekend. Okay. 4-2 win for them. That's great. It's the first multi-goal game they've allowed at all this season. So people might be concerned by that. I wouldn't say so. The goal scored by Pep Bale was outside the box. It was incredible. The first goal was off a corner kick set piece, and nobody was man marking the back post. So there was just some disconnection there. Or miscommunication, that is. I wouldn't put too much emphasis on the 2 goals allowed for Nashville. Again, this is a team that does a really good job at, I talked earlier about absorbing pressure, bend, don't break. We're talking with the Titans.
Right.
Nashville SC does a really good job at that, of absorbing pressure, bend, don't break. And then when they see their opportunity, when they intercept the ball, they just send it to Andy Nahar on the right side, and or they just send either a long ball, or they do a really good job of building up through the middle. Yeah. That's something we've seen out of Nashville when they were struggling after they came back from the international break. They struggled of developing play through the middle of the field and trying to dish it out to the right and left flanks. In the CONCACAF Champions Cup, we've seen with Nashville having Reed Baker-Whiting, this has kind of been his tournament. They've done a really good job at starting to facilitate the ball his direction on the left side of the flank and putting it up towards Warren Madrigal. And that's I'll bring that another topic up as well. Warren Madrigal has kind of evolved into this like target man sort of, because
Yeah.
Sam Surge is more of a back to goal guy, can possess the ball, make a turn, and go towards goal. But he also has the development of I'm going to do a feint move or a dummy move where the ball goes through his legs and then runs past the defender. Warren Madrigal is more of a I'll get the ball and take the defender head on and go past the line. So that's something that Nashville has worked really, I'd say, impressively majority of the time after the international break, is trying to get past that line, trying to break the lines in the attacking half.
Well, and you saw the first 4 matches, including the 2 against Club America after the international break, they only scored 3 goals. They've got 6 in the last 2. So it's nice to see the breakout coming, especially heading into such an important match tonight.
Yeah. And it goes to show you how important Sam Surge is to this offense. I mean, the fact that if he doesn't have 2 goals, that's only 4 goals in those last couple of matches. So again, it's still a lot of goal production, but not to the same degree as when Sam Surge is in the lineup. So keep that in factor. And one more thing before we go to break here is, over the weekend, Hani Mukhtar obviously scored a goal and had an assist and all that. Ahmed Qasim, who is, I wouldn't say struggled with Nashville, but definitely hasn't had the start to a new chapter in his career.
Yeah.
It was his first multi-point game in MLS. A guy that scored a really nice goal, had a nice assist. He talked about overthinking things in the press conference after the match, and I thought that was very telling, because he referred to Hani Mukhtar as like a big brother figure type thing, of saying, yeah, he's the captain. My wife and his wife, we eat dinner together type thing. And he says, I tried to focus more on the defensive aspect of the game, which is something I will admit he does struggle with. He doesn't, come back on defense a lot. He's more of an offensive facilitator, catalyst type player. So for him to admit that and just try not to overthink things, to me, is just a refreshing thing to hear if you're a Nashville SC fan.
Yeah, and I think you're starting to see more players step up around that core that they've built at the front with Surridge and Mukhtar and Madrigal and Espinosa. So excited to see what they can do tonight. Again, it is a big one. First leg of this semifinal match. It is a 7:30 kick over at Geodis Park. Hopefully the weather holds out. I hope everybody, of course, out there is doing well from the storms last night, and could see another wave coming through tonight. So hopefully nothing too bad, and Nashville can go get a win. 5465 on the text line says, what is a brace and what is the team they are playing? A brace is 2 goals.
Yes.
So a hat trick is 3, a brace is 2. The team they are playing is Tigres, means tigers in Spanish.
That is really good translation there,
Thank
Jake.
you. I took 6 years of Spanish in high school, so
it's paid off.
There you go. It's paid off. 6 years. I did not spend 6 years in high school. Between middle school and high school, I took 6
junior
years
high.
of Spanish, and I do remember that one at least. Tigres, Tigers. 7:30 kickoff tonight for Nashville SC, and if they move on, they face the winner of
Toluca or
LAFC. And I was looking, Nashville plays LAFC on May 17th here at Geodis Park. Wouldn't that be like around the ballpark of when the final would be?
Final would be May 30th.
So, wow. So it's a long time.
Yeah, it's at the end of the month.
Gotcha.
Which is interesting, but I understand why, because at the end of the month, then you have June 1st, April, May, June 1st.
Into the World Cup.
Which goes into the World
Gotcha.
Cup. So
is it just one game for the championship?
I believe so.
Okay,
yeah.
that's what I thought too. So exciting stuff. Nashville SC trying to take home their first trophy of the year. They want multiple, but opportunity here. You are now just 3 matches, 2 rounds away from taking home the CONCACAF Champions Cup. 7:30 kick tonight over at Geodis Park against Tigre. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Last call for phones here on the show. We will wrap up after this. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Parker Kelly, next man up. 1-2-5 the game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Finishing up the show on this Tuesday morning, Dr. Crane, Nick Frazier with me today. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly. The Yellow fella singing along over there.
He's just pulling at my heartstrings here.
He ends the show Parker has settled into a rhythm of at least the final song of most shows, like, Dreams and Nightmares on Thursday with TD. It's become Ella Langley on Tuesdays here. Wrapping up the show, we can bounce around a little bit here. We've had the MLB Network on in studio. How about the Phillies and the Red Sox both firing their managers this weekend? I know they've gotten off to really tough starts, but it is, you're 30 games into the season. You're less than 20% of the way through the year. Clearly, things had turned sour in those clubhouses.
And I get the whole Boston standpoint. You 17 runs, and then right after that, it's just bad look.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you win 17-1, and you're like, all right, time to fire the coaches. And I told you earlier, I guess the van that they hired to take them to the airport was from a company called Coaches for Hire, which was at the very least, a very funny coincidence if they did not do it intentionally. A couple other things. The Brendan Sorsby stuff yesterday really, checking himself into gambling rehab, which, good to know that you have a problem, you need help, but
sure,
opens himself up to this investigation where apparently he bet on Indiana football while he was there.
Freshman.
As a freshman, he was... I think I saw he was going to like Cincinnati Red games and like betting on ball or strike pitches. And so the NCAA is investigating it. I don't know what's going to come from it, but like there's a chance that they just deem him ineligible. And maybe you got to look at the NFL supplemental draft as, does somebody take a chance on Brendan Sorsby, who was expected to be a really big factor in the Big 12 this year at Texas Tech?
Well, also too, like there was that whole like betting scandal when they were talking about I think, who was it? It was Paul Feinbaum, that's who it was, saying that, it was like $1 to $200 or $2.50, talking about the pitches
right.
thing.
Yeah, like it was nothing, but it's like
at the same time,
you're not supposed to be doing it, right?
Yeah. And I think it was the NCAA, they granted college athletes for professional. No,
they were going to.
Well,
they pulled it.
Yeah, that's right. They allowed, and then they pulled it.
No, they didn't. They
really.
So some
they didn't allow it at
people,
all.
I have seen some people make this mistake that they thought they allowed it. It was supposed to be allowed. I forget what day it was, like October 1st, November 1st,
Sure.
something like that. And at the last minute, they postponed it a month. Some people, for some reason, thought that it was allowed for that month, and then they pulled it. No, it was never allowed.
Yeah, see, Feinbaum said it was allowed, and then Sankey pulled it or something.
Maybe they would give people a little bit of leeway because of the confusion there.
Right.
But like clearly, this had been going on for a while with him, and I think the NCAA, especially with gambling stuff right now, they want to make examples of people, right? Like you want to say you can't do this, and if you do, you're not going to play.
Right.
And so I kind of struggle to believe that he's going to be able to play for Texas Tech, at least the way things are trending right now. We'll see how it all plays out, but maybe he does enter that NFL supplemental draft. And like, I think teams would be tempted to use a pick on him and say, if we use a 4th round pick in the supplemental draft on Sorsby as a lottery ticket quarterback,
sure,
is that worth giving up our 4th round pick in next year's draft?
Or even a 5th or 6th.
Right. I mean, it just kind of depends. It's a game of chicken, right? Because the supplemental draft, you don't have to make a pick, right? You pass on it. And it's like, it's a game of chicken to see, all right, if I want him, how long can I stretch it without somebody else jumping in front and taking him first? So that'll be, again, it's still so early in this process, but if he is ineligible, I would think that would be his next move, would be the supplemental draft, and teams will have to weigh the pros and cons of that.
And also, I don't know if this is still a factor in all of this. Is he still dealing with the lawsuit from
Yes, I think
Cincinnati?
There was a development with that this morning or yesterday, something about him trying to just get that thrown out.
Yeah, he tried to dismiss it yesterday with his team of lawyers, and my guess is they're not going to be able to dismiss it. Cincinnati has not responded yet.
Yeah, it's a hectic week for Brendan Sorsby. And Texas Tech, I was looking, their other quarterback options are a redshirt freshman who didn't play much last year, maybe played in one game, former 4-star recruit,
right,
and then a transfer from Tulsa. So there's not like a great backup option for Texas Tech who's
They still have
expecting
Will Hammond, who played last year, and when
they?
Baron Morton got hurt. Yeah, but he's recovering from the ACL. But he
Gotcha.
got back to
Okay.
throwing.
That must be why I
last
didn't
week.
see him listed on the depth chart.
Yeah.
So maybe he's an option.
What about a JUCO transfer? Does that still apply to the whole situation?
I don't know. But I don't think that they can add to the roster unless it's a freshman at this point. So
Or else Joey McGuire will risk not being able to coach 50% of the year.
So that'll be.
Look, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'd be willing to risk 50%. I really
Well,
would.
Will Hammond's really good, but he just hasn't. Yes, he's real. They love him.
I
but
must
He's Heisman candidate worthy.
maybe not Heisman candidate, but he's good.
Yeah. Well,
Let's see. Will Hammond, Texas Tech. I totally missed him because I was looking at the depth chart and I guess he wasn't listed because he was injured. Last year he obviously didn't play a ton. He was 69 of 109, 3 interceptions, 7 touchdowns, 299 yards. Did not do much. In his career, he has 104 completions, 166 attempts, 9 touchdowns, 5 picks, and 1,100 yards.
see, the reason why I said is he a Heisman worthy quarterback? I think there's not a lot to the resume. I get that, but it's more of you're moving off of guys like David Bailey, Jacob Rodriguez at Texas Tech.
Right.
You bring in Brennan Sorsby, who is a preseason Heisman candidate in some aspects.
Yeah.
You have a program in Texas Tech that is involving a lot of NIL money to all these players.
Right.
You want to be in the conversation of the college football playoff.
Yeah.
This definitely plays a factor into all of that.
Yeah. And Texas Tech, they're kind of the focal point right now of this offseason. What's going to happen with Brendan Sorsby? Obviously, again, early in that, the NCAA hasn't released anything, but they said they are investigating the gambling violations. Before we wrap up, NHL playoffs. We haven't talked a ton about the NHL playoff, the Stanley Cup playoffs, because, the draft's been going on. But outside of a couple of sweeps, Colorado blowing out the Kings 4-0, Hurricanes sweep the Senators. We got some really fun series. Stars Wild has lived up to the hype so far. Canadiens Lightning has been awesome. And how about the Penguins coming back from 3-0, made it 3-2. They go back to Pittsburgh, or no, excuse me. They go to Philly. For game 6. So I've really enjoyed the Stanley Cup playoffs so far. I think it's going to be a really fun month and a half here coming up as we find ourselves leading up to a champion.
And how about game 4 with Anaheim and the Oilers? It was inches of the puck barely passing the line.
I know.
And it's crazy because Edmonton was leading that game 2-0 at some point. I was like, holy cow.
How about the Oilers having to come back from down 3-1 if they want to avoid an upset there? Panthers, who back-to-back Stanley Cup champions, missed the playoffs completely. Oilers, who have lost in back-to-back Stanley Cup finals, now have their backs against the wall, up against the ropes. So going to be a fun couple of months. Games tonight, Sabres trying to move on. They're up 3-1 on the Bruins. Oilers again on the verge of elimination tonight, and we get Stars Wild game 5. So should be a fun night of hockey. That'll wrap things up for us, Dr. Crane. Always a pleasure having you in, and excited for the future having you in multiple times.
Much appreciated. Thank you very much.
615-737-1025. That'll do it for us. Chase and Big Joe are coming up next here on 1025 The Game.